So the Canadian company gets that invoice and it sees that the spot rate is 102. Spot rate means that right now, for every US dollar that you were to give a bank, the bank would give you 1.02 of the Canadian loon, of the Canadian currency. That's what spot rate means. But remember, we're not doing this exchange until 6 months from now. So you would also have to then look, you'd have to look at what is called the forward rate of what are we anticipating. Well, in this example I have that we are expecting for the rate to be 1.024. 1.024. So that means that there is a slight depreciation of the Canadian dollar, a slight appreciation of the US dollar. So this person might feel, you know what, I better do this before the Canadian depreciates even more, and instead of paying 1.024, I might have to pay 1.3, 1.4 for the US dollars. So that company would agree with me, the bank, that 6 months from now, I will put into its account $500,000, and for every dollar, I will take out 1.024. Okay. Now, it could be that 6 months from now, when the exchange actually takes place, maybe the Canadian dollar is 1-to-1 with the US dollar. But it could also be that it goes all the way to 1.3. All right? So some of you may say, well, why do you do this? Again, participants do these foreign exchange forwards because they're trying to minimize their risk. They're worried that it would be much more expensive for them to do this transaction. Why don't you just do it today? That was a choice I gave you, right? I asked you, why don't you just go, if you're the Canadian company, why don't you just go ahead and sell Canadian dollars right now at 1.02 to get those US dollars? She could do that, but what are the disadvantages if she does that right now? She sold Canadian dollars and she bought US dollars, and so what is she going to do with those US dollars? Not invest them? Well, that's pointless because you're not gaining anything. Or, as this lady says, you tie them up, meaning you invest them, and depending on where you invest them, you could lose the principal, right? But if, let's say, you decide to invest it in a very, very cheap or secure, I should say, U.S. Treasury for 6 months and gain the interest, you then would sell the U.S. Treasury 6 months from now to make the dollar payment. But guess what? What if there's very little liquidity in the market and you can't sell the U.S. Treasuries, or you sell them at a lower price? So it's not a risk-free instrument. The price could go down and you could lose money. And you tie up the fact that now those Canadian dollars are gone. Those Canadian dollars are gone. Okay. Any comments or questions on the foreign exchange forward?